And first up this week, Aether's Blessing, the first book in the Aether's Revival series, written by Daniel Schinoven. It is 596 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Every year, the Empire administers the rite of passage into adulthood. That rite serves to identify those blessed by Aether to become magi. The new magi are shipped to the Academy to learn the arts of magic. The Academy is a dangerous place. Tournaments held twice a year can cripple or kill the students, and the clans of the Empire will go to great lengths to recruit the students they want. Gregory had one dream: to become a magi like the legends of old. Though he was ridiculed by the residents of the village and his unsupportive father, he never wavered in his dream. Would his age day bring the fruitions of his dream, or would the reality come crashing down on him? And it warns, this book contains adult themes, and that's absolutely true. Full disclosure, I received an advance copy for review, purchased a copy when it became available. This is just hands down a great series, a great story rather. It's a slice of life, cultivation, has a magical academy element to it, and light RPG progression on the cultivation side of things. I knew it was a great story when I just didn't want to put it down though. Like there's just like a lot of subtle things. I give a lot of like good scores, 7s out of 10s, right? What it takes to get an 8 is just something special. The story has to grab me and not let me go. And this one definitely did that. I get very busy sometimes between like reading and writing and family stuff and work stuff. And when I got this and I just didn't want to put it down, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely a great story. What really made this great for me was that it was a top-notch world building and character building. From the very first pages, the author takes the time to describe the rich cultural, political, and personal histories without bogging the reader down with dense text. Instead, it all flows naturally as the main character learns more about the world outside of his village and what it means to be able to cultivate Aether in the Empire. And while the world building and character building were the things that made this story great for me, that doesn't mean the other aspects of the story are lacking. The early portions of the novel really do a lot of developmental stuff with world building, describing who the character is, like the surrounding villages, his motivation for wanting to go to some academy, all that good stuff. And the mid story is mostly about the development of his magical abilities and kind of building the magic system here, based on Aether and cultivation. And it's really about the magical academy stuff. And then the end story, there's like a ton of good action there. The last quarter, 35% is really a lot of actiony stuff. So you're definitely going to get some action. In that first and mid section, there are some sparse action scenes, so it's not unactiony at all, but it focuses on other things to develop the story. In the novel, those are also elements of intrigue and faction politics that anybody who's ever read a wuxia or a cultivation story should be familiar with. All that is here, and it's really interesting. There's a lot of like layers of stuff, and of course there's also love and romance. On the progression system side of things, the RPG stuff, it takes a little bit for that to show up at all, and that's probably if somebody wants something really super crunchy with numbers and notifications and levels and stuff, that's not going to be the story. It's definitely on the lighter side of things. And even that aspect of it takes a little while because it doesn't start until he starts getting to the Magical Academy, which is about, I think it's like 15-20% of the novel. So it's going to be a little bit of a world building session between that. But there are RPG mechanics in this story, but again, they're not necessarily a video game stuff. This is stuff that's pulled from like more like modified homebrew tabletop stuff, and just like less crunchy RPG mechanics, our progression system. So there's attributes for every character, every student, every person. Body, spirit, and mind are the three basic groupings. And each has a training path and subpaths with specific elemental powers like shadow magic or elemental powers. And there's generally a good bit of depth there to each one of these systems and each one of these kind of cultivation and progression paths. That's mostly part of the mid part of the story here. There are actual quantifiable points of progression, which is what makes this RPG mechanic still and at least level 2 for me. And that includes that the students show their level of progression through tiers and through circles of cultivation progression. So there is actual physical manifestation that's part of the culture and part of the world for their actual progression. So like they enter the academy as novices, and it goes at different levels of progression and power and cultivation, all the way up to, I think, Grandmaster, and each one of those little sub-levels are like circles of power that actually physically show as a manifestation of their control of their ether and magic and stuff. So there is actual an RPG progression system here, but again, it's light. So if you want something again super crunchy, this isn't going to do it for you. But there are other aspects of this that I thought were super enjoyable, which I've already mentioned before. Overall, it's a great story. It really is. Just the action and the world building and the character development and some of the storylines, which were really nice and cute. And the magical system progression and development and research, all of it worked really well for me. Again, lighter on the RPG stuff though. I should also warn you that like most of the author's works, there are some graphic sexual scenes in the story. They're very skippable. And they're not there just for, just to titillate. They're actually part of the story. Like I'd say all the sex scenes are easily less than 5% of the story, which is like super, not a lot. And they make sense in the context of the story. Because the story is about a main character who's a young man who's exploring the world for the first time. He's just leaving his village. He's exploring the different parts of the world, different cultures, different relationships, finding love and his place in it. In addition to the other stuff we already mentioned, all the kind of sexual content absolutely makes sense in context of the stories. So I enjoyed it. I had a really good time with it. It gets a score of 8.0 out of 10 for me. That's Aether's Blessing, Aether's Revival, book number 1, with a score of 8 out of 10.